真的要说中文给你的这个演讲，但是我的中文说的有点差，不好意思，所以我们用英文好不好？So we're going to go fast. There's a lot to talk about. I was going to tell you so much about what's exciting in hardware, but we're all excited, right? Yeah, we're ready to go? So let me tell you a little bit about what we define as a hardware startup. Hardware to us is a little bit different, and we're trying to redefine what this means. So it's not exactly hardware like computer hardware. It's not hardware like a tool that you're going to build something with. But we're defining it as any hardware that is a startup that is going to take a physical product to market. So anything that requires manufacturing, prototyping, this general process. And there are similarities between those. And so we're going to talk about best practices to get those things done. A little bit about us. So I founded Berkeley Sourcing Group 10 years ago. We offer turnkey manufacturing services in China, mostly to Western customers looking to do their manufacturing over here. By the way, pictures are very welcome, but we're going to have all the slides available I'll tell you at the end where to get those, so you can download those yourself and review later. One of our main things is we act as your chief operating officer. So many startups are small. We're going to explain how difficult this is. There's a lot going on. So in the early stage, we help you to understand how to align your manufacturing plan with your marketing plan, and a lot of the things that normally in a larger company a chief operating officer would do. We basically start from design for manufacture. You give us your prototype and your ideas. We improve those for the manufacturing process, and then we take them through manufacturing, quality control, so forth, all the way to deliver product to your door. We've been around a while, so we've worked with 700 startups. We've really seen a lot of people succeed, a lot of people fail. We've seen a lot of commonalities between what makes them successful and what they need to learn. And so we're trying to help educate and build a global hardware community to connect the dots, to get people talking together, to learn from each other, to provide resources, blogs, articles, videos, interviews. Talk a little bit more about that later. One of the things we do for meetups, there's one here in Shenzhen. We'd love to have you guys. It's typically, we do it in Nanshan or Futian. We're doing it every 3 months now. We'll probably be doing it every month here very soon in combination with CETA. And let me take a minute too to say thank you very much for having us. I heard this was going to be in Longgang, and I was working with the organizers in Berkeley when this all started, and I thought, Longgang? What? What's out there? And some of you guys, it's your first time to China, and you're probably very impressed. But I'll tell you, I'm probably the person that is the most impressed with what is happening here. Because I was here 3 years ago. I've been coming. I'm not going to too many factories anymore. But if you're just visiting, 3 years ago, everything you see was probably not here. Literally everything that you're seeing now has been built up in the last 3 or 4 years. It went from 1 subway line in Shenzhen to 7 subway lines. Some of them you can take for an hour and a half without getting off, end to end. So it's just phenomenal what is happening, and it's really a bunch of support, and you can see all of the things that are happening. It's really cool to be a part of this. So kudos to what's happening here. Okay, so I'm going to run through these slides pretty quickly because I've got a lot to talk about, and I think we've covered how exciting this is. Joey spoke earlier today. I had a chance to meet him last night. What a great photo. You cannot fake that. That's great. Premier Li came to Shenzhen. He declared that Shenzhen is going to be the innovation capital of the world, and a part of what we're doing is making that happen right here. Also with CETA, the other group here in Shenzhen that's doing a lot towards that. Larger companies are starting to get involved. Intel is getting big into wearables. Apple acquired Beats. These are a lot bigger money than you saw before. Oculus Rift had a big exit. Nest had a big exit. That's a big part of the driver for all this. Hardware is expensive, so you really need the money, you need the funding, you need the support, and that network that often comes with that money. And a really big difference in the shift that we're seeing in the last year is that the investment is finally on board to really make a lot of this stuff happen. So some exciting numbers. Wearables, basically 2013, we might as well mark it 0. We're at 2.5. How am I doing on speed? 2.5 in 2014, 6.9 in 2015, and ramping up here very quickly. So a brand new market, great for hardware startups to enter new markets. This is the crowdfunding dollars raised only in the first quarter of 2015. So we're already at almost $30 million for wearables, over 10 for accessories and so forth. A lot of crowdfunding going on. We're partners also with Indiegogo. They had some of their numbers. They had a 1,000% increase from 2013 to 2014 in the hardware startup space. I'm sure that's going to even be larger in 2015, I would expect. So we hear a lot of these great success stories, and kind of like Emil said, you read the news and you think, wow, this is just incredible, it must be easy, everyone's making money, isn't this a beautiful thing? It's really hard. And a lot of the success stories, a lot of that crowdfunding, very few of those companies, a smaller percentage of those companies actually go on to become successful, sustainable companies. Very few of them ship on time. Very few of them have priced their product right, have understood how to manufacture their product. And so a lot of what you're seeing is a lot of buzz, but we still have the real success to come. And that's going to be kind of in this longer term game plan that Emil talked to just a minute ago. So when you approach this, the biggest question, or I think the biggest thing that people getting into it need to learn is, what is the big picture, right? You need to know what you don't know first. You need to really work this from end to end, because you can't go back in hardware. It's not software, you can't just fix it on the fly. You really need to have your plan together. There are a lot of pieces that come together. So you want to understand what those pieces are, how do they fit, how do they work together, and here they are. So first, ideation, right? As with any business, you must have an idea, you must have a starting place, you must have a value proposition. Ideation, value proposition, that's what we want to focus on. And then you have design. You need to design your product, right? With a good design, you need to think of marketing. How do you meet that value proposition? How to get to your minimum viable product. After design, you need engineering. You need to then make that into a product that can be manufactured well, and will work well, and will last. You then need to prototype that product. That's usually once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, again and again, till you really can get to the market validation, right? And this is another thing Emil was talking about, the first 1,000 customers. The great thing about crowdfunding is you can get market validation a little bit earlier. This is, I would kind of say, in a broad sense, your market validation is going to be your most important first step, right? You need to know what is your value proposition, and then you need to validate that the market will pay the price that you can sell it for, that you can manufacture it for, that will meet your cost of goods according to their needs, right? And crowdfunding is great because previously all you could do is ask people, will you buy my product? People will say a lot of things and they mean a lot of things, and they're mostly being truthful and trying to give you their honest feedback, but until they really understand deeply what you're trying to sell and how much it will sell for and what it means to them, they don't really know. And so previously marketing firms would spend big money to try to get a random sampling of the population to understand if they were going to buy the product. Now you don't need to do any of that, and actually you can raise money instead by just putting your product out there on crowdfunding, seeing if they will buy your product. And that also helps drive your business, right? So if you just barely get funded, or if you don't get funded, great. The best thing you can do as a startup is kill your idea, right? It's a lot of work, and if you spend all that work and it doesn't work, you just spend a lot of your life, a lot of your time, a lot of your money, a lot of your emotional investment, and you're starting over anyway. first thing you should try to do is kill your ideas. Figure out why it won't work first, and there's often many reasons. But if you do get funded and it's going to make sense, you can go forward. If you get funded by 10 times more than you need, then hey, I've really got something here. I can go forward in a bigger way with a bigger team. I can invest, I can bring bigger team members on. If you get funded 100 times more, now you're talking with the big guys, you're having different conversations, you have a very, very different plan. Each of those is going to fit a very different plan in a very different way. So you want to think about what that is, and the first thing you want to do is validate the market. How good is your idea? How much are people willing to pay for it? And that kind of goes back to the funding. So if you get the market validation, people will invest in your product. They don't want to invest in your product until you have that market validation. And really, crowdfunding isn't quite enough. Amazon reviews are what retail buyers want to know. And they don't even need that many of them. But if you have a very successful crowdfunding campaign, they're still a little iffy. You haven't made any product, you haven't sold any product. Nobody really knows if you're going to meet those next steps, and many people can't. So if you can make that product, you get it on Amazon, you have a great crowdfunding raise, and then you get good reviews on Amazon, now you have the complete package. You've validated your market, both theoretically and in a very, very real way. Tooling. So you need to know tooling. Tooling itself is complex. You have electronics, you have plastics, you have metals, all the tooling is different. Somebody who really knows their stuff has to be working on that. The hardest part, manufacturing. You really need to know manufacturing. There are hundreds of people involved in manufacturing your product. They all have to be doing the right thing at the right time, at the right cost, in the right place, working together, communicating all of these many, many, many details into making a very successful product. Including, and part of that, is the quality control process. So then, I think it's, you're kind of close, but, you've got a lot more to do. You need packaging, you need artwork, you need a form factor that fits on retail shelves that retailers want to buy. They only want it in a certain way and with a certain message. It's got to be safe. If you hurt anybody, you're in big, big trouble. You're out of business almost immediately. It's got to be durable. This is something that's very hard to test in all of those aspects that I talked about earlier. Durability is something that you really need the manufactured product to see how it works. You need to know the environment. Does it get wet? Does it get hot? Does the sun hit it? Does dirt get inside? What are your requirements for durability? You really need to think about that in the beginning in your design and try to do your best to look at that in your prototype. You need to have intellectual property, right? If you have a great idea and you spend all of this time and all of this money developing a great idea, and then a big company says, oh, it's a great idea, I'll take that, and they have all their money and all their support to push it through their distribution channels in a much quicker, much more efficient way, and they can easily cut you out of the market very quickly. So brand can help, but if you have certainly utility patents are the best, right? And you want to get those in whichever market you're going to try to go to. You need certifications, even if it's safe and durable and you have IP, every country has different certification requirements, right? You need to fit, given your product, whatever certifications are required to be able to sell there. Beyond certification, certain retailers have requirements. Not, you don't have to just look at the legal requirements, but different retailers may want something that's more BPA free or may meet other standards. So you need to understand what those retailers are looking for. You have to ship the product. You have customs and duties, and there's a little bit of work in order to get everyone working together and know how to ship that well. Once it gets shipped to the warehouse, you have to fulfill the product. Right? So you have to ship those individual units to your customer. You have to scan every box. Somebody has to put that box into a truck. That truck has to go to your customer. They have to unbox it. It has to be safe, as far as not getting broken. Right? This box is bouncing around. It's going through some hard conditions. And even if you get 1 or 2 or 3% that break during that process, that really, really hurts your company. Branding, you can make a great product, but you're not going to make a great business unless you make a great brand. The way that you're going to be able to make that extra profit and a really sustainable business is when people look at your brand and they trust you and they want your product because you represent a certain message and a certain type of product. And Apple is just the greatest example of this, right? People buy Apple products all the time and they don't do probably a lot of reviews on them, right? They have now accepted that this is the kind of product that I want. And they know that they're going to get what they want because Apple has been so great at being so consistent about their products. We all know what an Apple product is, right? It's sleek, it's modern, it's clean, it's user-friendly, it's expensive, it's stylish, right? Every Apple product that you buy will be all of those things because they have really stuck to their brand. And that's why they are able to charge a much higher markup because they found out what people wanted, they stuck to it, and everybody knows that that's what the Apple brand is. So you still then have distribution, you have to work with your distributors, you have to know what they want and build those relationships. You have to get into the retailers want things in a certain way, you have to know what they want. Every retailer is a little bit different, so you need to figure out who you're going to work with first, how you're going to work with them, and they will push hard, right? Walmart, biggest advice I can give is say no to retailers, especially in the beginning. Their terms will be 120 pages long. You will have no idea what they mean. You will never be able to afford a lawyer to go through and tell you what they all mean. And there will be some really nasty terms in there. And you'll raise a lot of money, you'll buy a lot of inventory, you'll send it to them, and if they don't like it for some reason or it's not selling, they will ship it back to you. And all of that investment in money and really, you probably just bet your company on their ability to sell the product, and if they didn't sell it, you get all of that inventory back, and you probably have no way to sell it now because other people know that Walmart or whoever else couldn't sell that product, nobody wants to touch it, so you're out of business. So it's much better to grow slowly and work with people roughly your size, keep growing, but in general, through the supply chain, you want to work with people about the same size as you. If you're small, work with smaller players. If you're big, work with bigger players. Once you get it out there, you still have customer service and you have returns, right? If something goes wrong, you have to have systems in place to accept that product back and how to do it. So, oh my gosh, how does anybody do this, right? How is this even possible? And the answer is almost nobody ever did until recently. We heard some success stories, but there was usually a backstory. Somebody had a rich friend, or somebody had a great relationship, or something like that. If you really dig into what we consider the old success stories of the inventor, there were other things going on. And it's only recently that there are now the tools and the resources and the infrastructure and the sharing and things like this going on that support small businesses in a way that they need to really be successful. So, in manufacturing versus hardware versus software, listen to Yoda. He had it right. You can only rework or redo. Usually, if you have a defective product, you start over. If you make the tool wrong, you start over. At $10,000 you spend on that tool, you can do some modification, but if it's a big modification, you throw the tool away, you start over. So there is no try. You've got one shot at a lot of the stuff. So you really need to know your plan, you need to know where your money's going, you need to spend it in the right way, and you need to get it right. Stepping back, so we did kind of the big picture as far as the different categories of what it takes. If you go one higher level, this is basically how a hardware startup is broken down. You have design, you have marketing, you have funding, and you have operations, manufacturing. Many people, a big mistake many people make is they think each of these lives in a bubble. Not if you do it right. If you're doing it right, when you're in your design phase, you're thinking, how is this going to be manufactured? How am I going to design for manufacturing? When you're in your design phase, you want to think of where's the market? How am I designing for the market? When you're in marketing, you need to be thinking of what is possible in the design. What can we do? Is this going to fit with manufacturing? And so here in the middle, there's a lot of overlap, and you want these players to be talking. Everyone needs to be talking together, and they all happen at the same time. You don't do design and then marketing and then manufacturing and then funding. You do them all at the same time. You're thinking, how do I get funding? How do I set up my marketing to get funding in the beginning? All of these really happen at the same time. And so you have to have the right team. This is a lot of stuff to know, a lot of stuff to do. It's very, very hard for one person. Investors know this. They rarely invest. They almost never invest in a one-person company. Sometimes two people, but three or more, or you're much, much more likely to get funding, and that's because they have the experience to know that it's very unlikely for you to succeed, especially in hardware with a one-person team. So, I liken this to Germany and Brazil. You can be very, very smart and amazing at what you do, but there is no way you're going to know those 20 different categories at the expert level that you need to compete in this kind of business. So I'm going to run through these tools and resources pretty quickly. Again, you can download all this later, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Events for hardware startups. So we do the Shenzhen Hardware Startup Meetup. If you're from Hong Kong, we have a Hong Kong version. If you're in the Bay Area, we have an East Bay version. We also are opening one in Tokyo next week. Eventbrite is great for events. I was one of the co-organizers of Hardware Con. It was the first hardware startup conference, which was in the Bay Area. It happened February 28th. We'll do that again next year. Others, TechCrunch Destruct, Wearable World for wearables. Here locally, the Shenzhen Maker Fair, a good place to see new ideas and learn about new products. Online communities, there's Hackers and Founders, Hackaday, Hackster.io. Some accelerators and incubators. If you need some money, you want to learn more, you want to be around other people that are really focused on this stuff. These are 3 that are very focused on hardware startups. There's many more, actually. For all of these, there's other tools. But if you start here, that'll point you in the direction of the others. Crowdfunding, Indiegogo. We're partners with Indiegogo. I'm a big fan of theirs. They offer much better support. They'll get back to you on email. They'll give you consulting if you're going to have a much larger raise. I've never heard of a single person getting an email back from Kickstarter, so it's a great platform. But honestly, the platform doesn't matter, and the best crowdfunding people build their own platform. They know that you have to drive your own traffic. The crowdfunding platform will not drive any meaningful traffic to your site if you're going to try to raise over $100,000. Some distribution channels. Global Sources has a new program. Global Sources Direct. 10B, of course. Tri-Celery. These are ways to sell your product online more effectively. Fulfillment houses. These are the 2 biggest, probably Shipwire and Amazon. So it's getting easier, right? It's getting a lot easier. All of those tools were probably not there a few years ago. And they're all brand new. They're all working together to make all of this happen. And so talk a little bit about a few of our customers and some of the main lessons that they learned. This is BKR. It's a glass bottle with a silicone sleeve. She was selling it as a clean product. It's glass, you don't have a plastic taste, environmentally friendly, you're not drinking out of plastic water bottles and throwing them away all the time. I thought it was a great message. I was sold. She started selling it, and she got some emails, and some ladies were like, wow, I love the colors. I've bought every color that you have. I wear them with all my different dresses. I can really use this to accentuate my style. And so she realized, these are my biggest customers. My biggest customers are using my water bottle as a fashion accessory. She changed her marketing completely, immediately. And she got in every one of the biggest fashion magazines. If you look at their website, it looks like a fashion magazine. You would never tell that their website was a water bottle company, because that's their brand, right? They're sticking with their brand is to provide fashion, and they're doing great. They're selling all over the world. They broke the price barrier for water bottles. High margins are important. So the key here is be ready to pivot, right? Be ready to change your plan. High margins are really important, high profit for hardware startups. You need those extra margins to be competitive because you need to be able to pay people. You're not going to be as efficient as a large company in many ways because you don't have all those tools. So really try to keep your profit margin, keep some extra in there for yourself. Key statistics, so typical retail margins are 4 to 5 times your manufactured cost. So if you buy a product for $1, you need to be able to sell that product for $4 or $5. So it's nothing like twice the amount. You need to have extra amount. The distributor is going to take, the retailer is going to take 50%, the distributor is going to take 25%. Anything that's left is going to go to you and the manufacturer. So that's basically how you need to look at it. ProMotion, this was the first customer I ever met. We met at an event. Amazing game, amazing what he's done. It's a cricket game like foosball. So you play it on a board, the bowler throws the ball, the guy hits the ball. There's all kinds of sensors everywhere to measure if it's a hit or if it's 1 or 2 runs or 6 runs, and there's an announcer that they're, just like a video game that comes through the tablet there. Amazing product. We've been roughly working with him, I mean, more so lately now that he's getting closer, but for the last 10 years, he's still in the prototyping phase. He's been prototyping for 10 years. He quit his job 4 years ago, full-time prototyping. Complex products are very, very hard. They take time, they take money. Be prepared. If you want to do something that's complex, realize the complexity, and I think he did. He's showing a lot of great success. Coke is ready to go, and he's getting a lot of traction. But if you're not prepared, this can easily wipe out your cash flow, very quickly. Copper drum pants. So I met these guys 8 months before their crowdfunding campaign. I knew they were in trouble already. They were too far behind, even 8 months before their crowdfunding campaign, to be ready for manufacturing. I let them know, I said, I'll help, give me a call. No response. 2 months before their crowdfunding campaign, I met them again. I was like, wow, you guys are really, really in trouble. Give me a call, I'll help. No response. I met them again 2 months after their customers were supposed to receive their product. They said, Greg, we need help. Please help us. And so we got them out in about 4 months from where they were, but they had made almost no progress in that last 10 months or whatever it was. And she actually had even run a factory here in Dongguan, an LED factory. So she thought she could do it herself. She thought it was going to be easy, and that she understood the market and Chinese factories, and it's just a lot of stuff. You have to be able to know all the specifications and the bill of materials and all of these things. And again, it's really hard for one person to be able to do that big job. So when you're designing, when you're getting ready for crowdfunding, before you launch a crowdfunding campaign, make sure you know all of the steps and the process that you need to go through to manufacture your product well. Modify watches. This was an existing watch that they just modified a little bit to make a new product. The existing watch is hardly sold anywhere, and they changed it so that you could paint on the face, and they modified the strap a little bit. They made a bunch of different colors and options, and this is a great way for startups to get into markets in general. If you can be more customizable as a startup, you have a lot more ability to do that typically than a large company. If you can make something that's different per piece or different for many pieces, you can offer something that is hard to compete with for large companies. And the best thing they did was that they then could sell these they sold them to Microsoft, they sold them to Google, and they sold these at 1,000 and 5,000 unit orders. So instead of working so hard to get that one customer, to get that one order, they had a 5,000 piece order that came in the warehouse and left the warehouse the next day. They didn't tie up any cash. They got all of that money early on. They were able to put all of that money towards tooling. When they made that $5,000, they were able to make another $1,000 for themselves for all of these customized products that they sell to individual customers, which really allowed that to happen. They would never have been able to afford to make that much smaller order independently. So think about customization and think about how can you sell these larger orders initially to the B2B, right? To these company corporate gifts, stuff like that. This is the one guy that I've ever worked with that had a plan. He stuck to the plan. The plan worked exactly as planned, and he's doing great. And partly because he was a top brand manager for Kraft and Xerox and some other large companies, and he knew his stuff. He knew how he was going to go to market. He took the time to know his manufacturer costs. He knew the design. Did a lot of the design work himself, even though he was a marketing guy. And the reason that it was so successful is because he attacked a niche market. Right? This is a water for domestic chickens, so people that have chickens in their backyard, their home. It gets very messy, the chickens kick stuff everywhere. Normally it gets in the water, they get sick, it's not sanitary. So he took kind of an industrial solution that big companies didn't want to bother with, turned it into a small solution for a niche market, did it very well, did a very high quality product, focused on Google AdWords first. Within 3 weeks, he was the #1 hit on Google. Within 3 months, he was the #1 hit, the #2 hit, and the #3 hit on Google AdWords. He dominated the market. I don't think there were a couple other kind of minor chicken waters out there, but nobody's going to compete with him. Nobody can compete with him. He owns the brand, he owns that market completely, and it's a lifestyle business, right? But nowadays, investors are considering $40 million a year a lifestyle business. Many investors don't want to touch a business that can make $40 million a year because it's not enough growth for them. So, hey, that's not a bad lifestyle. Right? So this is really the big thing I'd like to share with you guys, is that we're doing a lot of community building, and I love to share these stories. We've worked with a lot of people, and we've learned a lot, and I would really want to share that and try to help people, make people more successful. So we're putting that behind a new global platform that we're creating called Hardware Massive. We have a Chinese version, ChinaHardwareMassive.com, and this is where we'll have our slide. If you add us on WeChat, we're going to send you a link, and you can go there and you can download all of these slides from today. This will be Meetup meets LinkedIn, so it will be chapter-based in local cities. Much like Meetup, you'll have an event, your chapter will organize an event. You'll get to meet people locally that are interested in hardware startups and share information. But you'll also be able to be connected globally to all of the chapters in a much more searchable way. So you'll have a lot more profile information. It'll be easier to connect. There'll be some social media. And we're going to put up all of this content, blogs and interviews, and people that are the true experts in the field are going to be putting their thoughts and information on this site. So if you're interested in learning more, this is going to be the best thing that we can provide. Please check it out. And together we will create the future. It's happening. So if you guys are ready, I'm excited.